Here's another slide on me. Like the intro mentioned, I'm from Utah. I love Utah. I love UtahJS. I've benefited greatly from the community and network here. I try to give back. Always happy to connect. I love connecting people for new roles and jobs, whether with me or someone else. It's a passion of mine. I cheer for all of your success. So feel free to hit me up. I'm pretty much, you can find me on LinkedIn. I look like this. There's not too many Jake Lingwalls that worked at Domo and Tomo. Yeah, the whole reason I applied to Tomo was because I thought it was funny. So if you have another OMO company, I don't know, maybe hit me up. I'll keep it in line for the next job. So one thing I realized when trying to put together this super simple slide is that if I did some math, I appear to have been in management more than I have been writing code at this point in my career, which don't believe that. I'm still a front-end engineer at heart. That's who I am. That's who I claim to be. I just happen to do some management stuff. And I'm passionate about JavaScript, front-end experiences, careers, business, building companies, doing startups. And so today's talk, I'm going to kind of blend some of those themes together. Talk about navigating maybe some complexity technically with page speed performance, but also a lot on navigating some complexity career-wise with some advice. So the last 6 months or so back at Tomo, we had a great experience building a new site, tomo.com. I'll talk about it later. That's a Next 14 app router, doing all sorts of cool stuff. So learned a lot about page speed performance, and so I'm going to talk about some of the learnings, some of that journey, some of that experience, and then get into advice. So I'm going to start by saying when I was at Domo and just writing code, we basically were on the left side here. I learned JavaScript, CSS, HTML. We had some frameworks. We were big on AngularJS, and we switched to React. And then I learned some tooling, and like TypeScript was coming on the scene, and it was like we didn't like it yet, but now everyone likes it. And we were worried about the browser, and like being a front-end engineer was a lot of this. It was like getting into spa land and spending a lot of time in there. And now when we're building new sites, it's like accessibility should have been there, just it didn't fit on the side. Now the front end incorporates things like the server, worrying about like analytics and tags and SEO and page speed performance, and it feels like the realm of things that are considered front end has greatly increased, and there's more complexity. And I think with that increased range comes increased opportunity. And you'll notice I've highlighted performance here in bold because that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to dig in there. And then the visualization in the middle is going to kind of re-impact this like layers of, at least through my own career, where at first I was worried about like the user and the browser interactions and all that. And now I've got to worry about a server as a front-end engineer. And now I've got to worry about third-party code and loading and script tags. And more importantly, I've really got to focus on that impact that what I'm building, more so than just writing the code. And we're going to talk a lot about impact today. So how do I make impact? Well, we're going to talk about that performance. So page speed performance. A lot of you are probably familiar with Lighthouse or other things like that. Oh, I recolored those. So here are kind of the core web vitals. So these are like the key high-level metrics to think about when you're thinking about page speed performance. And that is, again, how quickly your site loads and performs for computers and for humans. I think computers are a big customer once you get out of writing B2B spa software that I've done my whole career. So are you all familiar with these, the core web vitals? You should get familiar with them. I think there's plenty of documentation online. I'm not going to like read them out exactly what they are, but here's kind of the summary of them. Interaction Next Paint, largest contentful paint, cumulative layout shift are kind of like the three stable big ones. The other three that Google, and we're going to talk about Google because they define a lot of this stuff, cares about is total blocking time, first contentful paint, and time to first byte. And I think vitals is a really good name for these things. Like, when you go to the hospital, they check your pulse, and I don't know what the other vitals are, but they check those things to see if there's any problems. These are the things that at a quick glance they can measure to understand kind of how your site performs. And they weigh that performance quite a bit. So they're kind of a tricky bunch of things to mix and match. Like you can try and cheat to optimize for one metric, but if you cheat without actually fixing problems, it'll create problems in other metrics. So if like, hey, I want my first content to paint really fast, but I'm going to like not optimize my JavaScript, so I'm just going to like delay it all, be clever, well then my total blocking time is going to be worse, or my largest contentful paint will be worse. And so there's these set of key vitals And I recommend, if nothing else, you go and get familiar with these and be able to talk about them in your career. So the web vitals are very important because, again, we care about the performance of our site. Why do we care about the performance of our sites? Because I care about how people find our site. I care about how people come in and the experiences they have, and I care about the business. So this is like a kind of a funnel chart from like most broad to most specific of like concerns I have as a front-end engineer now as I'm building a site and an application that is more public-facing. So sure, there's search engines. Those are most broad, right? Google, we're going to talk a lot about them. Now there's things like called GEO. They're trying to brand new terms for making sure your microphone turns off. GEO is like a new term. I'm not sure that's going to catch on or not. That's for like, hey, you want your content in AI engines? Like people are starting to ask ChatGPT, for example, us, what are the best mortgage rates? And so like we have an interest in making sure ChatGPT responds that says, hey, you might get great mortgage rates through Tomo. Then there's like supporting normal content, like blog content, articles, posts. Google's big move lately has been trying to figure out what helpful content is. And so what can I put on my site to convince Google that my site is helpful for customers that are coming there? Then there's like paid channels, ads. Those things all have analytics, pixels, tags. These are all things that are easy to push off into the realm of marketing or other concerns. But really it's an engineering concern. And embracing that and learning out how to support it is important. And then the bottom is like, direct links, front-end engineering, if you guys aren't familiar, like, Open Graph, so you get those nice images and text messages and social posts and things like that. And these are all like how people come in and interact with our site and our business. And they're important to be part of the things that we think about now as front-end engineers. So at the very top is Google, right? And Google has this really complex algorithm that, there's a whole industry of the SEO industry where people are just kind of guessing and survivor buyership. There's actually a Google algorithm leak not too long ago, which is super interesting. So some of these things have been proven out to be more important now. Google had gone on the record saying some things were like not important, and then the code showed something different. But there's all these pieces that fit into how Google thinks about your site and where it wants to rank it and where it wants to show it and how much it wants to index. And these are things that we care about in page speed performance land. And again, page speed is a big factor of that. So as it comes back to Tomo, as we went to build this new kind of real estate website, there's a lot of established real estate website players out there. You're probably familiar with Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, all of those. How do we try to convince Google to index and rank our site? How do we get them to have users find us when compared to these established players? Well, you look at this algorithm, you try to figure out places that you can have an advantage, right? Like you can maybe have helpful content. You can try to fill out some novelty that's different than these other websites. Those things are all great. It's really hard to like be the more authoritative domain when you're first getting started than something that's built in. But we figured we could win on page speed. And if we won on page speed, Google would bring us more traffic. If Google would bring us more traffic, we build a bigger business. So I'm going to show you real quick, if the Wi-Fi works, what Tomo.com looks like. This was a fun journey. We started with a goal, and we were like, we're going to start building this thing. And we launched it within 3 months, kind of a private launch. Then we did a public launch, within 6 months. And it's been a tremendous fun journey. Again, this is like Next 14. It's not available in Utah, by the way. We don't have homes in Utah for sale on Tomo.com, so no need to go hit it up. But hey, if you're looking for houses in something like Seattle, Washington, great. You can find homes here, and you'll look like, hey, it looks a lot like a traditional real estate website, right? It's got homes, it's got listings. I can interact with it. I can go see the details. It's got a map. I can go in, and we felt like this actually has some cool features too. If you want to play around with them, you can try like the AI search and stuff that everyone's doing. The point is not the site. The point is like the experience, how quickly we build it with new technologies and where we created an advantage for our business. And that's on page speed performance. So you'll notice it looks and behaves a lot like Zillow might. But how do we get an advantage over Zillow? Well, we thought we could beat them on page speed. So page speed, again, Lighthouse kind of looks like this. If you go to pagespeed.web.dev, you can put in any URL you want that's public facing. It'll basically run those Lighthouse metrics, except not on your local machine, and give you kind of an insight into how your site's doing. So At the top, they'll show the web vitals over time. So these are not a single run. These are like over the last 28 days or something, it says here. And this is how Tomo looks. So this is on our Seattle, Washington search index page. So we want Google to index as many of these links to homes as possible. So you'll notice there's a lot of content that loads here. So that's why it's not like 100. I'm not bragging that like we're the greatest site in the world. We have 60 performance on mobile, which is yellow. It's not green, but we are loading a lot of dynamic content. We're going to hit databases. We're bringing those out. We're rendering as much as we can. We're sticking as many links and things on the page to get Google to like us as possible. But our core web vitals are looking pretty good. We're passing here. Our largest contentful paint, our interaction index paint, those metrics we brought up at the front, we're passing. And then we come down to mobile, and this site, like if you want to dig in here, like this is maybe the best activity you can do taken away from this is learn the core web vitals and then come run your own website for your company through this and see what it gives you, right? It gives you this timeline. It tells out things like that total blocking time. So that's how long your main thread is being blocked by processing or running JavaScript, largest contentful paint. And then down here, it gets you into the diagnostics where you can click into each of these, and they give you examples of things that you can dig into and think about. We've eliminated quite a few of them here at Tomo. Sometimes this list will be a lot longer if you haven't tried to optimize this at all. But even here, you can see there's lots of things we can do. Like we're loading 1,347 DOM elements on this page, which is a lot. But again, we're loading like 32 home listings and maps and all sorts of stuff. So this could be smaller, but that's something we could look at. And so we get lots of ideas around here, and they're super helpful because Google wants your site to be better. So they're pretty straightforward on the documentation of how to improve things. So if you run your site, come in, Google it, find the problem. You can find potential solutions. If we have time, we can talk about a couple of them. Here's what Zillow looks like. I just ran this morning. Looks like it actually did finish, right? So Zillow, a company that's public, multi-billions, engineering teams, way larger than us. Their mobile performance 37, right? So not as good, tons of blocking time, worse numbers. Hey, they actually load less DOM elements than us, good for them. But there's a lot of stuff here, right? And so Google's page speed performance, or Zillow's page speed performance is less. They are the incumbent. They have that authority in the algorithm, so they still get ranked to the top. People still use them. Google still loves them because they're helpful. But can we win market share from them and other competitors by outperforming them? The thesis is yes. So this is kind of what we've been thinking about at Tomo, and here's kind of us versus competitors, just trying to drive home the point of like our page speed performance versus others and why we're gaining traction. So our run was like 60 when I did Seattle. Zillow was worse this morning, but when I ran it right before doing these slides, I got a 39. Realtor.com got a 36. Homes.com's got a 43. And so this is like a really interesting metric. I'm a competitive person, so I was like, we're going to be number one. There's no reason we can't be number one. And so we are. And so there's things we can do better. Like you'll see Homes.com is beating us on desktop. So I gotta figure out that. Oh, this mic. Oh yeah, it's my bad. Hand grip, I'll hold it lower. So this is us versus competitors, and this is kind of the way that we look at it. We monitor it, we track it, because we want to be the fastest. Again, the reason we want to be the fastest is because we want Google to like us, and if Google likes us, they'll send us more customers. And we're very focused on the business. This is like not like the look at us, we're huge right now. This is just showing that here's some traffic numbers. These are public. This is a tool called Ahrefs. You can find it online. It's pretty cool. SEO folks use this a lot. You can see most of the numbers are going up and to the right, and in the business world, that's the direction you want your charts to go. The numbers are very small, like 12.5K. Traffic is not like we have a booming business with our real estate portal, as they call them, just yet. But it is going up and to the right. So we're getting more and more traction with Google. We're getting more indexed. We're getting more backlinks. We hope to build this over time. So that's where we're going. And so that whole story isn't to talk about just like Tomo's cool, here's an example. It's really to kind of come back to the career stuff. And So I'm going to switch into that now and then reference this example I just gave you is maybe something to think about as you talk about your career and what you're trying to accomplish as an engineer. So there's an asterisk on the word career for a reason, because I feel like it's those financial advisors. They're like, oh, this is not financial advice, and then they say things. This is my perspective on career stuff. It may or may not work for you. There's probably half the people in the audience will be like, this is terrible advice. Don't listen to it, and they might be right. So this is just my perspective. Take it for what it's worth. But here's some thoughts that I think have helped me in my career, and something that I frequently, as I mentioned at the start, I love connecting people to jobs. I love helping them find roles. I love giving them feedback on stuff. I'm happy to do that for you if you want to connect and message me if you think I can help you. And these are some frequent themes that I help people with. So again, don't take this the wrong way. This is just a framing. So a lot of companies will look at an engineer and they kind of don't trust the technical folks. They don't understand engineering sometimes, and they look at a lot of what they hear coming from engineers sometimes, and they don't understand it. They feel like engineers have different concerns or different priorities, and to be fair, the front end community, at least historically, has been accused of rewriting stuff into our favorite frameworks. We've been more focused maybe on methodologies versus business outcomes. So like, hey, we do things this way. I hear what you want, but we have our methodology. Some people, artisan code, craftsman code is good. Again, I'm not advocating for junk. What I'm saying is, if you're more worried about the quality of your code than you are the impact of what you're building, the business might not trust you as much as you would like. And then a really great example is kind of look what I can do features, which are really fun. I do them all the time too. We just had a hack week and I did this myself. But this is like when I get space to show what I think about what I can do, I go and I implement something that's kind of wacky and fun and doesn't really help the business. I think there's opportunity in all of these things to, instead of feel like you have differing concerns from the business, to reframe things in the sense that you are aligned with the business's needs and thoughts. And I think page speed performance is a really great intersection here, where we care about how performant our code is. And why do we care about it? Because it helps drive users to our business, and helping drive users to the business gets and they understand. And so reframing technical concerns in a way that aligns with business goals is kind of the secret sauce for growing, if you want to go up the manager track, at least at most companies, or getting high-level role opportunities. It's a big deal. And so I think a great example, if I go back to this last slide, where it's like, look what I can do features. We just had a hack week. A lot of us wrote fun stuff. We had one engineer who's great. I love him. He went and he was like, I'm going to go do this technical project. I'm going to pitch it as SEO focused. And he did it. And I have never seen a hack week project be adopted so fast and backed so quickly by the business, because he framed it in a way that said, hey, look at this thing I'm going to ship. It is going to drive value. And that's a really cool thing to see happen for engineers in their careers. So here's another controversial thing I say a lot. Writing great code will likely only get you so far in your career. Again, this is just my experience. I've talked to a lot of principal engineers and engineers in the past in the community that have been like, hey, I'm stuck. I'm not getting recognized. My code is, I write better code than other people. How come I'm not getting the bonuses? How come I'm not getting the promotions? And they're just doing things like they're not doing good storytelling, which we'll talk about in a minute. They're not speaking the language of the business. They're not going just a little bit further the demo and speak about the impact of their work. They're just showing the code. And in an ideal world, in an engineering world, and maybe in some companies, writing great code is going to be enough to be successful or to get to the top of wherever you want to go. I think a lot of places it's not. And so learning how to speak the language of the business and showing that you have alignment with their needs is a really big deal for your career. And again, page speed performance with where the front end is going with Next, App Router, and Remix, and all these other stuff, where we have these more public-facing experiences, not just spas, are a perfect opportunity to lean into that because it's so well aligned with what the business wants and needs. So that's kind of the thought on why page speed performance fits there. So storytelling. Here's my good friend Jason Staten, incredible engineer. A manager at Tomo. I had a slide here. I posted yesterday or a few days ago on LinkedIn that I was going to be talking here. And he left this comment, and I liked it better than my slides, so I just stole his comment and put it here. 100 slow pages make 100 good stories. 100 good stories make me interesting in interviews. So speaking of storytelling, this is another way that page speed performance can really help your career. is that you can tell these stories about how you optimize and improve the site, what metrics you did, what trade-offs you made, and why you did it. And that makes you really compelling in interviews. And the market's getting a little better now, but it has been a frustrating spot for a lot of engineers recently trying to find new roles where they've been stuck in the interview stage and they can't stand out. And I think this is an opportunity to, again, do that better storytelling and frame things in a different way that'll help you in interviews, particularly at higher levels and with smaller companies. We had one role to hire for at Tomo for this specific real estate portal project. And I put it out there. I posted it in the Slack community here. I actually talked to a lot of folks here. Had a really great experience in some ways. Had some really bad experiences in other ways. We had like thousands of AI fake applicants. I'm pretty sure we had like an interview farm where I interviewed the same person twice. Or at least he attempted to get me to interview him twice. I was like, dude, you didn't even change your Zoom handle. You're like, you're the same person. I'm not going to talk to you again. So it is a tough spot to get noticed, even if you can get past some of those screens with all those like AI applicants and thousands of inbounds for a single job application. And the engineer that we ended up hire, James, are you here? Did you make it? There he is, James. Shout out to James. Incredible engineer. He really stood out to us because he was able to talk about some of these page speed performance things. We were looking to build a public face website, and a lot of front-end engineers, particularly in the Utah community, we've only done SPAs, SPAs, I don't know how people say them, that's just how I keep saying it. And they had little to no awareness around any of these concerns. And so when I'd ask something like, how would you increase the performance of your site, the answer I got a lot was, well, I would use React Query. Shout out to Tanner, who's I think speaking in the other theater in just a few minutes. It's a great piece of technology, but I'm like, why or how would React Query help your performance of your site? And there was no storytelling there was no understanding, there was no tracing it back to metrics or outcomes. And in a competitive interview market, it wasn't good enough. And James was able to get past that and talk about actual metrics and thoughts and strategies, and he stood out and he got the job and he's killing it, and really happy that worked out, James. Anyways, so that's like kind of the storytelling career interview side of things. So maybe if you're not convinced enough around why like reframing and thinking about alignment and page speed performance is important, here's like another reason to focus on the performance of your site and application, particularly if it's consumer facing. It just builds this nice flywheel. So drawing those metrics again, like that largest contentful paint, that's LCP. If you have that load, it feels like it loads better. If you have lower interaction in next paint, the site feels snappier. If you have lower total blocking time, it's faster. I can actually realize value from your application. And if I do those things, those performance improvements, those decrease bounce rate, they increase something called dwell time, so how long people spend on your site and your application, that is important. Doing those things increases Google's perception. As Google perception grows, so does your ranking in organic traffic. As your ranking organic traffic grows, your site network effects kick in, and you get this nice flywheel which justifies further investment in your site and your team and your application and your experience. It allows you to do more and more good things. So I think focusing on performance and even these page speed performance metrics, whether you're public facing or not, will lead you to create better experiences, which I think is something we all care about. And I'm going to go insofar to say, I think when it comes to startups, the strength of startups are their constraints. And we got a lot of constraints at startups. You know, a lot of them are sometimes are money, time. You know, you're always on a clock, you're always on a timer, there's always that pressure. But those constraints force innovation. They force creative thinking. They force, in some ways, you know, cutting out bloat or things that you don't need, and gives you a very focused product and experience. And I think those constraints are the power of a startup. And to apply that to UX, I think constraints can be the strength of your UX as well. So if you're looking at building new features on your site or your application, and you're looking at them and you're trying to grok them as a team or give feedback, if you talk about them purely from a like, I like this, I don't like that, yeah, sure, that's helpful, you're a user. But if you take the mindset of thinking about how these things might impact performance, how they might impact the business outcomes, how they might impact how users find or use your application, you can actually get pretty far with framing them around substance like that. And people get it. They understand it when you speak about it in a business alignment terms, and they'll be even more receptive to your feedback. So using the constraints of page speed performance to build better experiences, even internally as we review things, I think is something pretty powerful. So if you can look at those new mocks for those new features that maybe you're skeptical about, and you're like, hey, I think doing this is really going to force an additional network call before we render the page. That's going to hurt our largest contentful paint, our first contentful paint, or we've got to load these extra JavaScript libraries that we don't want to bring in. That's going to increase our total blocking time. It's going to hurt our performance metrics. That's generally going to get a pretty good reception from people in the business and the thoughts, and they're going to have to make a decision about whether that's something they want to assume or not. And instead of just using them to object, you can use them to think of, that's me. I don't hold microphones every day, you know? Instead of just using them to object, you can use them to propose solutions that are better and cleaner and faster, and really, really partner with people in a way that maybe you haven't before by using those kind of performance frame of mind. So here are those lists of constraints again, at least the top level ones that are easy, they're well published, they're well documented, they're good to share. And if you take another look at these after the conversation and you're like, all right, which one of these constraints, which ones can I go optimize, which ones should we think about, which ones do we have problems with? How can focusing on one of these help the business, and who can I go talk to about those kind of things? It's going to help you navigate the complexity of your career, and then again, it will help you navigate the complexity of the sites you're building, because it's going to force you to make good choices for the user and help build a really great experience. So here's just a couple tactics we used at Tomo. There's lots of little things you can do, but I think these were kind of some interesting, fun little things to encourage people to do. We coined the phrase "save a div." Save a div. So when you're going to go write something and you're doing a PR review or a merge request review or whatever you call them, depending on which source control you use, could you find a way to eliminate an extra DOM element? Could you save a div somewhere? And the answer is almost always yes. It's almost always yes. And we have 1,385 or whatever DOM elements on our page. So there's got to be more ways we can save divs. And even that simple trigger of when I'm reviewing something, I'm going to try to eliminate the divs, because every DOM element I eliminate helps our performance scores and our rankings and drives us up. Also, it simplifies your code. It actually usually makes your CSS much cleaner. There's just really great alignment all the way through users to you. And so look for ways to save a div in a merge request review. Another thing we did is invest in measurement. I think this is a really great thing, particularly if you are going to go up the management track, but everywhere, measure things. So use the page speed insights, which is what they have APIs you can use. We put those in CI/CD, so we can track changes we make in merge requests to see how they are affecting, at least directionally, the performance of our site, and that gives us some automated ways to look at it and think at it and keep it top of mind. If it's in CI/CD, you can choose to do whatever you want. You could even block deployments if you wanted to. I think there's lots of opportunity there. The other thing I was going to say is level up your questions. So when you're doing those mock reviews, there's a lot of really great questions we traditionally asked, but start asking things like, hey, how are people going to find this feature? How are they going to use it? How is this page going to be exposed? What SEO concerns do we have? Is this public facing? Who's writing the meta tags and descriptions for these things? It gives you a great opportunity to level up and lead out in new interesting ways. And the last thing I'm going to say is just radical curiosity. It's the name of a book. It was an okay book. You can read the book if you want, but I like the phrase radical curiosity. Don't just these things that are concerns like the tags and the analytics and all these things that are oh, that's a product concern, that's a marketing concern, this or that concern, SEO is this concern. Embrace those things with this expanded realm of the front end. Partner with those people, learn them, speak their language. It's going to do wonders for your career is the thesis. So those are just some little things. There's a lot of others we could talk about. Feel free to find me, hit me up on LinkedIn. The quick recap of all this is that I think leveling up your application performance will help you level up your career. Again, that page speed, such a virtuous cycle. The front end is larger and bigger than it was before. I say embrace that opportunity. Get really curious, learn as much as you can. Speak the language of the business, be a better storyteller, embrace those constraints, and you'll offer better experiences and be better able to navigate all the complexity. And that is what I had to say with 32 seconds left.